Welcome to the CPTM Smart Partners Hub. Today is 23rd of March, Friday, and quite exciting, intensive times are taking place since last week when we launched the countdown towards the Commonwealth Summit. And one of the aspects of our countdown is that a number of key Smart Partners founders, CPTM founders, CPTM fellows, CPTM companions, are joining the CPTM Smart Partners Hub to guide the Commonwealth and the global context about how to engage the mature platform that CPTM is all about nowadays in 2018. So in this context, probably the first, most senior global kind of influencer and networker is at the hub today with us, and she's Virginia Gamba, Dr. Virginia Gamba, and welcome, Virginia. But actually we should bow to Virginia, because if you are to really describe the current formal function that she has, she's assistant to the Secretary General of UN. She's minister in that context, and she's also in charge in that way of the children and armed conflicts. Part of her background in the last 30 years or so was actually to enhance, develop, apply the tool that Smart Partnership is very much promoting and applying, the interactive dialogue. And in a more strategic way, to not only to one's nation, one's preoccupation, but beyond in a global interaction. So because of so many global interactions that are taking place and which one cannot even keep up with every other second, one would say, I suppose the first intervention in our countdown from the Assistant Secretary General of UN, Virginia Gamba, one of the CPTM founders in the last 30 years of CPTM, is extremely important. So thank you very much for giving us, Virginia, a little bit of time before this webcast, but you are here in London, or you are in Europe in the last few days, and you're going to go tomorrow somewhere else. But having CPTM Smart Partners Hub as a space where you can relax, you can do whatever you think you want to do or reflect on, is one of the objectives of maintaining the library, in inverted commas. So in addition to that, of course, the library is formed of reading tips, and we thought that one of the main contributions to those people who are involved in international negotiation is this most interesting thing about understanding power politics in digital age, the so-called naked diplomat. Now, I'm sure you can enhance this, and His Excellency President Museveni, our CPTM fellow and companion chair of the movement, on Monday, we usually present him with some of the things, and he needs to choose which one. Yeah. And we were talking about the Enlightenment, which is so much a smart partnership philosophy and so on. He said, "What about that, naked diplomat?" So, so please.
Thank you so much.
Virginia, the Commonwealth heads of government this year, we had so many interventions to various Commonwealth heads of government in the last 30 years. But the biennial this year is quite special for all sorts of reasons. It happens in London. it happens at a time in global context where, as we said, there are so many kind of signals which you don't know how to interpret, and one connects the other, or one emerges another one. And of course it taking place in UK. UK is preoccupied obviously with preparation for Brexit, and at the same time the Commonwealth as a whole, where UK plays a very special role and trying to build up a new role. So the Commonwealth Sense of Government in the week of 16th of April is becoming the point of reference for probably years to come. Yeah. The next Commonwealth Sense of Government in 2 years' time will be in Malaysia, and is in 2020. So that is very symbolic too. Yeah. So actually there are quite a lot of expectation, hopes and so on for this 2018, which whatever is being decided or highlighted will be reviewed in 2020 in Malaysia, which has a big significance for all the CPTM smart partners. So what is your view about the whole?
I just think, first of all, thank you very much, and thank you for my reading tip.
It's very small, won't add to
I really appreciate it very much. I'm just happy to be here, and I do think that this is a really momentous occasion. Let me start in different parts. It is entirely extraordinary that this summit in April is going to be so large. It will take place in London. I think there's great expectations, not just for Commonwealth countries and for the hosting government, but I also think in the international community. And in fact, I do believe that the Secretary General of the United Nations is seriously considering coming at some point to the summit. It's yet to be confirmed, but there is a strong interest. And I think that strong interest is because at this point what we need are connections. We are in a very difficult moment in the history of the world, frankly. We have serious misunderstandings between regions, but at the same time a real need for connectivity to be enhanced rather than reduced.
There's a realignment, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's really an old story, isolationism versus cooperativism. And I think everybody understands that we have to cooperate with each other. We have to connect to each other. At the same time, there is also a belief that perhaps there's a misunderstanding about what is the value added of cooperativism and connection versus looking at oneself and isolation. So it is a moment of tension. But therefore, I think this summit...
Actually, you end up, if you don't quite understand the value of the connection, with hyper-connection and illusion.
Exactly, an illusion. Yeah. So I think it is back to basics, and I think in this meeting I'm expecting it to really show a new path to connectivity in perhaps a new format, where we would have platforms for discussions that would be in themselves bridges between global and regional and specific connections. So the Commonwealth is a family, and this is one platform, but this one platform in the agenda of the summit clearly is engaging bridges to reach existing global goals for global platforms. In this sense, the United Nations has clearly stated that key items for the future, the present and the future, are to focus on the strategic development goals, the 2030 agenda versus our 2020 agenda, which is part of that in a very important way. 2030, absolutely, and of course it preceded the 2030 agenda, which is nice, and it fits it, which is nice,
fits very well.
which fits it. But I think the 2030 agenda is very much prevalent in the mind of everybody as a global agenda. I think within that there has been a growing interest in the development of a few concepts, like what is the power of education, of finding new tools of working and new tools of connections and new tool of learning for humanity to be able to reach perhaps the 2030 agenda faster. At the same time, there is a real interest in youth. And here we have to stop and say, of course, I am in charge within my function as Under Secretary General is to look at children in armed conflict. It's a very small age group, 0 to 18. But what is so interesting is today to focus on the population, global population. Mm-hmm. If you think about it, in the global population of today, we have about 50% women, 50% men. Mm-hmm. And we tend to look at it that way. Mm-hmm. But if you turn it on its head, you have to understand that 50% of the men are children and 50% of the women are children. So 50% of the world is under 20 years old. Incredible. So youth today is the present, it's not the future. We keep talking of children as our future. That's not true anymore. Children are our present because they dominate. They dominate in almost every field. And so the United Nations is seriously looking at youth and looking at ways in which we can include youth from the not on the margins of policy making, but at the center of it. So I think education and youth are very important on the global agendas. They have been identified, and we're working on these topics. And if you look at the preparatory forums for the Commonwealth Summit, that's exactly what emerges, there really are forums for the People's Forum, there is a forum for women. Women have become, and girls particularly within the women portion, have become like a strategic asset. Education is an asset. I think business, bringing in the private sector to carry on more of the load of managing these development goals is also very important. And again, it appears very clearly in the 4 lines that this summit is beginning to present. So for me, the summit is fundamental not just to, in a way, perhaps relaunch a Commonwealth partnership, that is already imbued with elements of a global agenda, that Commonwealth group of states can actually assist each other in reaching these global aspirations and goals. And I think this is identified. So for me, it's not just the revitalization of the identity of a group, but it also is allowing this group to help each other to act as bridges to global agendas for the common good. So here, again, I'm very excited because from the CPTM point of view, the emergence of this summit at this point, the experience of CPTM on training, because ultimately the smart partner way is a method, cooperative resource and interactive method that is proven by time to work in the discussion of really complex issues to arrive at win-win situations that everybody can clearly identify. So I think that education, that way of training the mind for creating bridges, which is what is needed now, is now a prime asset that I believe the Commonwealth Summit would greatly benefit for. So I was thinking very much of this summit as the creation of a new type of bread, and to feed the world, And this bread would then be able to be transported globally through bridges and variations. But if you think of it in terms of bread, in several aspects of this, education, business partnerships, smart partnerships, youth, because the 29ers are youth, which is the central line of bringing to the center of decision making that group of youth as smart partners. They're all so critical to this summit, and CPTM has got such an experience of 30 years getting in that direction, that for me CPTM can become the yeast of the bread. And you know that bread is judged by the years in which it survives on the same yeast. So being able to bring back, to have saved an original yeast, to have been true to it, and demonstrated through an interactive, successful process how to help each other in reaching one's goals and the goals of everybody. Therefore, it's almost biblical, you know. You bring back the yeast to where it belongs, the bread that can be produced out of this summit to feed the world really needs the CPTM yeast. So I'm really here to more or less talk to you today to see, to push CPTM to be generous with their experience, to be proactive in the summit, in the preparatory of the summit, and to bring this worth of experience to the table because it is desperately needed. I think the time has come. And I think CPTM has done what it was set out to do in the first place.
I mean, the next few years, we already got embedded a number of signals into this East. I liked your metaphor very much. Eastern bread and new bread.
Yeah.
The signals were picked up mainly by the way of central bank governors who were preoccupied with their financial inclusion and so on. And when they started about 4 years ago in the library, in the hub, to be quite innocent and ask what is a crypto, what is a Bitcoin, can you tell me what is a data, and all that. And that was about 4 years ago as part of their think tanking interaction, the method you're referring to. And without realizing, by just being part of it well ahead of others, they became actually the East itself.
Yes.
I mean, it's incredible. You can't believe it, actually.
But I think that's
that
just
the governor,
one.
we talked from
It's one of the very basic examples. It's one of the basic examples. That particular intervention, let's say, of CPTM, has, for me, become one of the most relevant ones in what everything comes together. It shows the asymmetry. We will say the classic proportions of the asymmetry, because when you look for the golden number, you're not looking for equals. You're looking for sums and parts that together might be dysfunctional, but once you put them in a specific frame, they become perfect. And I think this one, particularly on the governors' meetings and the discussions of things like bitcoins, frankly should be replicated across the board. And I think this is something you can present with great pride to the Commonwealth Summit as a successful demonstration of the Smart Partner way. I also think the 29ers as a concept are a very good approach to present as a way out.
One thing, Virginia, you do know that there are youth councils, national youth councils.
Yes. Yes.
All stimulated even more so by the UN.
Yes.
But the Youth Council, which is just coming back from feedback from the Smart 29ers, who feel very free agents, and they want actually to enhance the Youth National Council. So there was a Commonwealth Youth Council there. They don't know how to handle that because they end up being these Youth National Council structures, not able to engage actually the community youth where they are, there are so many. The Youth National, they remain at that level. They remain as structures. So one of the things that they put to me and the Smart Partners, General Tomina and so on, was how do we get
them to
the Smart 29ers to engage.
But it's true.
And it's very much to do with conflicts and peace and
almost in everything, because you've seen it in all the walks in life. In the UN also now we have a special envoy on youth that is a youth person, is a young person, is a lady, a girl, in other words. But I agree with you that sometimes, as in the way with gender, with women issues as well, has happened, that once something is identified of being of importance, then usually governments or international organizations, then they generate a post. Now this post is supposed to, the post is supposed to mark a definition in the priority of this issue in that state or organization. And it never has teeth. It usually is one or two people, and they are mostly ill-defined on its role. They usually have one or two roles. One role is to be the advocates. So they are the ambassadors of youth for that government or organization. That's one protocolar role. The other times, in particular in the issues of women rather than youth, they are supposed to be the watchdogs that ensure that there is a mainstreaming of that one element across the board of the departments or divisions, and they ask questions, what are you doing on this? They try to do a mapping of how either women or youth are represented or are engaged in each part. So again, either they are mappers and coordinators, or they are protocol and ambassadors. I think a new approach is needed, and I would say, yesterday I was part of a very interesting experiment in Sweden, where I just come from, where there was a group of 60 youth that presented to the United Nations through their government and to me their ideas, 15 recommendations they would like the Security Council to take into account on the issue of how better to protect children in situations of conflict. And I was fully expecting to see something that was, good, but not very credible. And I was very surprised. I was very surprised at the maturity of the recommendations, the feasibility and practicality of those recommendations. So I asked a lot about the method that they had used to arrive. And it had been a 60-day effort across 5 high schools in the country and some young leaders in the communities where those schools were that talked together, community dialogue with the students and with the young leaders. And out of that very interactive dialogue emerged a group of priorities which were then used in a smart partnership form, discussed between all of them until all of them by consensus arrived in the 15 that they could all agree with. So I think one thing that the youth envoy or youth representative or the youth position should engage is to be given the task to engage in youth forums nationally. So give him or her the responsibility to start their own dialogues with the youth and the communities in different regions of a country and within different areas of concern. So if you liberate them and you train the 29ers to be facilitators of dialogue, then they will be able to engage in the same way 2 or 3 of these dialogues, smart partnership dialogues, in country with youth. With youth at regional level, at community level, within they can choose a sector of education, at the universities. They can engage in different sectors, they can choose a topic, and then they can really imbue that topic with the recommendations coming from the youth. It will be much more interactive, and I think it will reach the ground. So I just think we need to be a bit more creative on the responsibilities. Is it going to be an advocate? Is it going to be a mapper? Or is it be a person that will engage with youth as that responsibility and pass the engagement and the recommendations to the cabinet, where it belongs?
That's a very, very just timely. It couldn't be more timely after the 2 days that we had think tanking waiting to meet the chair at the State House with 4 the key representatives of the 29ers. We had time while waiting, which is the advantage, to discuss very in-depth about smart partnership and smart 29ers. Not only in Uganda, in the Commonwealth as well. So it's extremely important what you
Perhaps
just
you
said.
should have a small meeting before the summit to focus on how to present this experience and what to recommend about the 29ers and the functions when you get to summit, because I insist I want to see CPTM in Summit. I think perhaps, I don't know, a side event or something that can show that the Smart Partner Way, particularly in the case of the governors meeting, in the case of trying to provide a useful role for 29ers and how to engage them, and on the training on the method itself, might be something that all the Commonwealth will benefit from hearing. So perhaps you should have a preparatory virtual meeting.
Yeah, we were doing open house. Oh, we will do some open house about that.
Anyway, but I'm very happy.
Well, I mean,
congratulations.
Virginia, thank you very much for passing by, more than passing by, spending quite a number of hours here. And I think for instance, in UK context, quite a number of CPTM Smart Partners founders also, they've been trying to kind of highlight their involvement so that the British government understand or pick up the main assets of this smart partnership. Their own participation and contribution as UK into the Commonwealth and beyond the smart partnership. And only yesterday, as we already discussed, David Craig, Lord Craig, former Chief of Staff, fellow and companion, he made an intervention in the Commonwealth debate of the heads of government in the House of Lords. And I think all these things, including now yours, probably will allow the CPTM Smart Partners to be less shy about their maturity they reached, and to go beyond after the Commonwealth Summit, beyond just kind of dealing with nitty-gritty and explain more the method. So
but I think it will happen. I think it's not just an obligation you have, but very few organizations or associations have got the experience to show results, not just quantitatively, how many meetings, how many people, how many years, but qualitatively, the distillation of that result. It's a very old association. It has proven itself. There have been mistakes and there have been successes, and one has built always on the successes, not on the mistakes. So by doing that, you can see the distillation of that method, that experience, that involvement, that now can be easily put in place depending on the topic. It's not, it's not the teaser, it's not the brain teaser, it can be done. And so I think it is time for you to give back. And so I would have no doubt that not only we should talk more about CPTM today, make it more, make others understand how relevant it is today, but also bring that depth of character and the maturity of process with so many examples that are qualitatively and not just quantitative to the table. And there is a month to prepare for it. I think one really has to make sure that all the CPTM members that will participate in the summit make it a point that one of the talking points is to discuss the method and the results.
No, absolutely. I mean, one thing that I will always, now discussing between ourselves, will always keeping me on my toes is all this paradox between limitless and the limits, actually, of what.
Of course.
So,
but
what we were discussing.
But what is independence? I always say, what is independence? What is true freedom? What is true freedom? True freedom is having full command of a space. If you have no space and it's just an empty canvas,
we're not talking about physical space. That's part of it.
You have to think about it in a way that is understandable to the human brain, and the way to understand it is a physical space. Where have you more freedom? In a limitless pampa grass that you don't see the horizon because there are no milestones, there are no mountains, there's nothing. You just see a flat surface and you are told this is yours. you are not free in that space because you do not
Yes.
dominate it, you
Correct.
don't control it,
Correct.
you don't have, you cannot play with it. Whereas if you are given a person or a group, you say, this is your house, it's yours, this is your small plot of land. You can be totally free in it because you know every inch of it and you know how to turn every inch of it to the best use. So I always say, the real freedom consists on having very clear ceilings.
Bounded,
It's
bounded
the
definition of a
safe
space. Bounded.
space where freedom triumphs. Because if you don't have this safe space, freedom can become your prison.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So it's exactly what you're saying. It's not the limitless and the bounds. It cannot be constructed again. You can be limitless when you know the bounds. You see?
That's it. That's it. That's
Because
it.
everything,
The bounds
you know,
are slightly
nothing
different
dies.
from limits.
Yes, but
let's
this
have
is
a-
why we live
let's
in
have a further
civilization,
syntactic
you
about
know.
this,
It's
yes.
about norms, it's about regulations, about what you create,
These
what
are
you believe, it's
regulations.
about principles. This is the space where you can be creative. You
Yeah.
can be limitless in the creation as long as you know where the bounds are and you are in agreement with those bounds. Now, if you feel constrained by your bounds, then all you need to do is enlarge them, but not break them. This is the key of limitless.
Good luck in your new
Thank
function.
thank you very much. Traveling
if
the
we can
world.
back you up
Well,
in
hopefully.
any way in our own little hubs.
Oh,
Smart
you always do, and I
29ers,
feel
so
part of the
thank
whole
you very
community.
much.
So
Thank you very much.
I'm a fellow with all of them. I'm a companion to all of them, and I feel their strength in me.
And say hello to Malta.